To some open wheelers and youngsters with big dreams of perhaps making it to Formula One day. The championship, of course, is set for an exciting conclusion this weekend in the Cam's Pace Australian Formula 4 Series. It is a double-header weekend, if you like. Lewis leads on top and hoping to get the job done. He's been so dominant throughout the season so far, and it's a great story in many respects of a young man who wasn't perhaps sure about if he could keep the motorsport dream going. He has rebooted and come back and very much got his eyes firmly set on making a career in this sport. He's on top on 267 points, 84 ahead of Ryan Sewell coming into this one. But there's some great lineage in the game. And young Emerson Harvey, the grandson of the great Johnny Harvey, a Hall of Famer in motorsport, is a part of this contingent of races here. Time to take you to your commentators for this one. Headed up by Darren Smith and a guy they simply know on social media as Rob James. Take it away, guys.
Thanks very much, Greg Rust. Yes, Rob James right alongside me here, and he is absolutely pumped for this race on wet tyres. Rob, first this weekend. First race for the weekend, and it's Formula 4. 2 rounds here this weekend. Race winner yesterday, Lewis leads with Ryan Sewell right in behind. This is going to be a landmark weekend for F4, isn't it?
Absolutely. Very important round, this one, for everybody involved as we take a look at the track map. The international circuit this time round, we're racing on 18 corners, 4.95 kilometres. And this is the first time Formula 4 has raced in anger this in the championship's history as well. We had a race yesterday. It was in the wet. Hopefully today we may see another track record set by any one of these drivers. So there's plenty to play for this weekend. It's not just the championship we're after. There's lots of other sort of podium finishes. We've got P2, P3 still up for grabs for this weekend as well. And there's plenty of motor racing to come here at the Shannons Nationals this weekend to enjoy this wonderful 18-corner circuit.
Some of these young drivers will be looking forward to that 2020 date here when Asia Le Mans comes to this track. Maybe some open-wheeler drivers put a little bit of a roof over their head, increase the lap times and outright speeds as we get the Asia Le Mans series coming down under, and we'll be at this magnificent track. It's absolutely fantastic. A little bit of clouds up in the sky, but certainly a fantastic venue. Emerson Harvey for Shannons and Focus on Furniture on pole position. Right beside him will be Lachlan Hughes, who was rapid yesterday in early qualifying in the Leipzig Australia BRM. Antonio Astudi, great to see the young Victorian driver in his HVI Sport Miguel on 3rd position. Ryan Sewell battling. This is a live battle for the championship from Ryan Sewell to Lewis leads on the next road. Jackson Walls and Tommy Smith round them out. They're just about set on the grid.
And it's a semi-reverse top grid for this one as well. So we got Emerson Harvey, the season debutant, likely to take out the Burson Auto Parts Rookie of 2019, joined by last year's Rookie of the Year in Lockie Hughes, who's on pole position. The revs are rising, the conditions are wet, and we are off at the Bend Motorsport Park. Lockie Hughes gets a brilliant start. Emerson Harvey bogs it down. Antonio Astucci and Ryan Sewell, the big winners as they approach turn 1.
It's almost like they had an extra bit of grip off the line there. The second row of the grid, Astudi and Sewell came charging on through. It's the 15 that goes out wide of Lockie Hughes. He's got a clear run into turn 1. The rest of the field bunch up in there, just keeping clear of each other. Looking there, Tommy Smith back in the series here this weekend. And it's the 76 of Emerson Harvey that's just gone backwards off the line there. In fact, he's found himself all the way back down at the back of this field as they come around through 3 and work through the very, very fast, long left-hander, turn 5, as they come around a fantastic part of the Tail and Bend, or the Bend Motorsport Park layout. This is the guys fighting it out for 6th and 7th on the road. It's the number 16 of Tommy Smith there, and he's got Emerson Harvey behind him. Politics on board now with the car in 5th place there. All keeping it on the black stuff at the moment. It's a very, very shiny, skatey surface here when it's wet, but the rain has actually stopped falling, and we're starting to see that these big open wheeler wet tyres, every car is on wet tyres, so we can see it gets thrown up in the air, and what we do need is a bit of wind here to carry it off the track as it goes up in the air, but it's not exactly windy at the moment.
No, exactly right. We saw yesterday Antonio Astudi having a crack at qualifying to start out on slicks. He thought he'd be the guinea pig, if you like, driving to see if there was a dry line or an advantage to take the Hancock Slicks, but it wasn't to be. They do group up rather quickly, the tyres, but definitely not in the wet conditions here at the Bend Motorsport Park. It's very green out there, especially we've just had the Australian Endurance Championship qualifying, so they've laid down a little bit of rubber for us in a dry line, which is not ideal for these wet weather tyres as well. So, of course, you know, you don't want to be wasting tyres across the weekend. You want to have the freshest set. Of course, we have another 4 races after this one, effectively. 6-race weekend for us across 2 rounds to determine our 2019 champion. But we're looking at the moment, Jackson Walls at the moment is defending from Antonio Estudi. He got a ripper start, did Jackson Walls. He's definitely got the red mist about him in those starts. He's very eager to make up those positions. Of course, very long straight here. And he's got that slipstream, does Antonio Estudi. They're side by side as they approach turn 1. They'll get that side draft as they approach. Jackson Walls absolutely having none of it. But will Antonio Estudi have the ultimate grip? And he does into turn 1 and takes the position, and he runs wide, and Jackson Walls recovers back. They say a week in football is a long time. 1 corner in motorsport is even longer.
Certainly plays out. There's the number 23, which we're keeping a very close eye on. Lewis Leeds would like to try and get as many points as he can to try and clinch this championship this year. He's right in the draft now of Jackson Walls, but what he doesn't want to see is what's actually happening, and that is Ryan Sewell is jumping away at the front end of this field. It's a 9-lap journey. We're only on lap number 2, but the number 23 doesn't want to see Ryan Sewell driving away at the front of the field.
And he's also got the challenge as well, does Lewis Leeds, to just hang on in there and just claim the maximum amount of points that he can get. It's a very long weekend here. There's no point scrapping for 4th place, for example, and scoring no points by bagging wheels, as we see replay now of Estudi and Jackson Walls. Estudi definitely got the better of the slipstream, and he probably had the ideal line there. Would have thought Jackson Walls would perhaps run off, but that grip around the outside just hooks up better, and you see Antonio Estudi's AGI car just spit off, and then Jackson Walls recovers to that position.
Just watching on that head-on shot there, the Antonio Estudi car is running a lot of negative camber on the front of that car compared to any of the other runners, which will be ideal. It'll be good in the wet. It should be good around these faster corners around the tail and Bend Motorsport Park layout. But certainly down the straight, if it dries out, it's absolutely going to destroy those front tyres. So great head-on shot up that very long straight. And what we did see was Antonio Estudi running a lot of negative camber. It's something that I would suggest that even his dad might have thought of coming out of his time with Formula Holden in the early days of F3 in the Gold Star. Here, a couple of the cars running it, but you really see it on Antonio Estudi's car as we watch our Lockie Hughes driving away in car number 15 has had an absolute ripping opening 2 laps. He's got himself a strong advantage already over Ryan Sewell. I would suggest, like Rob, you just said, that Ryan Sewell just wants to establish himself in this race, and maybe towards the end of it, if the tyres are starting to go off, and we're really starting to see a drying line, and no wet tyres like a drying line. Wet tyres like wet, shiny, so that they don't overheat. They overheat very, very quickly. And with some of these aero-dependent cars, big slide there for Jackson Walls, gathers it all up through turn 2. And there he is, Lewis Leeds, set to pounce again. He pounced on Estudi in exactly the same part of the last lap where he understeered wide. Now he's just letting Jackson Walls know that I'm here, and that's all he needs to know. If you're going to understeer again, car number 11, I'll be all over you.
Jackson Walls is high in confidence. He's just fresh off the back of a podium in Suzuka, would you believe, in the Asian F3 series. So it's a bit of a comeback to the F4 car in the wet here at the Bend for young Jackson. So he's got the widest Formula 4 in the land, holding off our championship leader at bay, doing a ripper job in P3 at the moment as Jackson Walls in the Patrizzi Corsa car. He is eager to get another podium result with the races remaining this year. Hasn't had the best start to the season, so he's eager just to race out there and race hard and show the rest of the world what he's capable of. We haven't got too much in the way of that rooster tail that we're seeing with, apart from that shot, of the wet weather at the moment. So it's not too much of a factor. Through the slow corners, it's not too bad, so everyone's got some visibility. Yesterday with the sun setting, everyone was squinting. They had the tinted visors on, and then the sun disappeared, and it was a real struggle to see. So they're certainly well rested after yesterday's race in comparison. But we're looking at the moment the 2 Castrol pole position winners from yesterday, Lockie Hughes for yesterday's race. Didn't have a great race yesterday from pole position, dropped back, but he's certainly making up for it now with our round 6 pole position winner, and Ryan Sewell right behind him. It's a little bit confusing. He starts on pole for race 4 of the weekend, which will be round 1 of round 6. A lot of numbers flying around.
Race
in the
1
air.
of round 6.
Exactly. So it'll be on pole later today, which is, of course, critical for when he wants to start and perhaps be the outside championship contender.
So as Rob's just touched on, we have 2 rounds being run consecutively here this weekend, 5 and 6. By late tomorrow, actually not even late tomorrow, mid-afternoon tomorrow, we will know the Formula 4 champion of Australia for this year. Lock up into the corner there as we just see Lockie Hughes, the front right wheel off the ground and stopped as he came into the corner there. So turning in late, lifting it up, we just saw the wheel stop rotating. Interesting thing with Jackson Walls coming off the FIA Formula 3 race out of Suzuka is the F3 cars are just a little bit more. They're a little bit more horsepower, a little bit more tyre, a little bit more wing. So the world will be slowed down a little bit for him this weekend. So he'll be able to think well ahead, be able to look up the road, be able to feel and predict a little bit more. Having said all that, wet conditions throw all of that out the window, and you're focusing just ahead of the front wing.
It's one of the great. It is one of the great equalisers. The wet weather. They are in a completely different stratosphere when the conditions are wet. The rule book is out the window in the sense of what is conventionally, a wide line is often the best line. We hear about the karting line, for example. There's often more grip where it's conventionally dirtier in the dry. But we're seeing Ryan Sewell, the fastest driver on circuit at the moment, is about 2/10 faster on the previous lap of Lockie Hughes. He was a weapon yesterday, Ryan Sewell. He started from P6 and finished P2. Bit of a quiet achiever was Ryan Sewell, because Lewis Leeds just romped away with the race victory yesterday. But Ryan was by far the quickest driver out on track in those wet conditions. He has got that Team BRM car absolutely hooked up in PG at the moment.
Well, I tell you what, AGI Sport have had it pretty much their own way throughout season 2019, and it's good to see that BRM, which one of the most successful open-wheeler race teams across many versions of open-wheeler racing in F3 and Formula Ford over many years. So it's good to see them fighting back with Ryan Sewell in the number 5 car. And Ryan Sewell leaving his charge, I guess, at this year's title almost to the last minute to start getting these good results is really, really clever of him. Here's Lewis Leeds weighing in on Jackson Walls. Just doesn't look like Lewis has actually got the car to pressurise him, but he's there just in case there's a mistake.
I just noticed Lewis lifted the visor just a little bit. I wonder if he's got a little bit of fogging up going on in that cockpit. He's getting the slipstream now on Jackson Walls. He wants to finally make that pass and get out of that rooster tail of rain. But Jackson Walls is having none of it. He's saying, if you want this title, Lewis, you're going to have to fight for it the hard way. And Lewis Leeds just hangs on the back there side by side again. The switchback through turn 2. He's run wide. Great work, Jackson Walls, to hang on there. He is not afraid. He doesn't matter who is right behind him. Antonio Snooty all over the back of his teammate too, but he knows the team games, this young Antonio.
I would suggest that Jackson Walls has learned a fair bit up in Japan over the last little while, because that's the sort of driving that Lewis Leeds had to put up with when he was racing in the UK and racing in Europe, and that is that you just don't give any quarter. I think that Jackson Walls went over to the wet side of the track just to rescue the tyre a little bit there, and what that did was it made Lewis Leeds run down that drying line. So Jackson may have just saved the tyre a little bit by giving it a good soaking up the right-hand side of the main straight. But this is some really strong driving by Jackson Walls. In fact, I reckon this is the best I've seen Jackson race. He's got one of the best in the world in F4 cars right behind him, and he wasn't able to dispatch him in that last opportunity. Interesting thing is, though, that the 2 places that Lewis Leeds has made up has been through that turn 1-2 complex. He wasn't able to put that one on the Batocchi number 11.
So it's a matter of time. He's got to really get a supreme exit on one of the final corners to really slingshot him into turn 1. Because as we saw before, even though they could be side by side, and even if it's the test of who breaks later through turn 1, it's not always going to be the case that the successful driver will end up that come turn 2 and 3, as we saw many times before, including with Leeds' teammate Antonio Studi right behind. Holding steady at the moment. Ryan Sewell just losing a little bit of ground. He was less than a second off Hughes off the previous lap. That gap now between Lockie Hughes and Ryan Sewell, 1.1 seconds now. Got our own little separate train going on here for P3 though. Tommy Smith also a little bit of a quiet achiever as well. Had some overheating issues yesterday aboard his Team BRM machine. And we see Lewis Leeds all over the back of Jackson Walls. Willie, he's a little bit far off compared to that last lap though. They're side by side.
Covering the wet line there in the number 11 of Jackson Walls. So he is definitely getting it covered over as we go down to pit lane.
Rob, you picked up before about Lewis Leeds just popping the visor open. He's been struggling with fogging yesterday as well as today. Not running any tear-offs either, though. I was saying that not only is the issue the fogging inside the helmet, but there's a lot of dirty water on the track, so he's having to wipe the visor on the outside and also try and get some air up on the inside as well. So visibility problems there for Lewis Leeds.
Yeah, that's horrible in any conditions, whether you're in a tin top and the inside of the screen's fogging up and you're getting a lot of dirty water. And there is some patches around this track where you do get a little bit of water coming across the track, and the dirt carries through, and it's just like being in your car. You get it sprayed all over your helmet. Often it is helped by the fact that it's in open air and it whooshes off the side, or it blows off the side. But how close that Lewis Leeds is following Jackson Walls at the moment is it's going to be getting sprayed all the time, and as soon as you start to get a bit of heavy breathing, it's just like standing in front of the mirror and fogging it up after you've had a shower. So Lewis Leeds having a lot of challenges here. There it is again, great shot there from our cameraman, just getting it open, getting it clear, and once you get it open, you only need it open a little bit of fresh air over it, and it clears up very, very quickly. One of the things that is really hard at the end of this race is getting back with the teams. The teams actually have to strip the cars and make sure everything is nice and dry again. You don't want to get a coil pack wet. You don't want to get a shock absorber adjuster wet. You don't want to get all these things wet for too long. So they come back, they get blown down with compressed air and some lubricant on them. And the same with the drivers. They'll be very, very paying a lot of attention to their helmets. They'll put them over a dryer and also clean off the visors multiple times between now and the next race.
Lewis Leeds a little bit closer now on Jackson Walls as they approach through the final corner. Will this be the lap that he finally gets past Jackson Walls? Jackson Walls doing a mega job at the moment to hold off and hang on for that P3 place. He is so eager to maintain that podium position. Meanwhile, Lockie Hughes now as well, fastest driver on circuit, only by a 100th though over his teammate Ryan Sewell. They're very evenly matched at the moment, the two teammates. They're running a race of their own. This is almost the second class. And Lewis Leeds finally gets past Jackson Walls to claim P3.
Not for long.
Not over yet. Antonio Estudi's just hanging on the back of it as well and thinking, if you blokes get stuck into each other, I'm going to profit over the back of you two as well. Although Antonio Estudi playing the defensive game over Jackson Walls, he's the distraction for Jackson. They're side by side again, and in a matter of moments, amazingly, we saw turn one, Jackson Walls, P3. He's now P5, only after a couple of quarters.
So he's been dealt a severe blow there, but Lewis Leeds has got his car absolutely dynamite through the 1-2-3 complex, and he is now setting out after Ryan Sewell. So these are the two championship protagonists. It's a decent old gap. In fact, it's 9 seconds between, it's 8 seconds between him and Ryan Sewell. So with 3 laps remaining, I reckon it's a bridge probably a little bit too far to cross, but he wants to have a go at it. There he's trying now, just a little bit of understeer and a little bit of oversteer on the exit of the corner. So Lewis Leeds has relieved himself of Jackson Walls for the time being, and Jackson certainly will try and come back at these two because Antonio Estudi has gone through there as well. And I would suggest that we're going to start to see these lead cars, Lockie Hughes and Ryan Sewell, start to look for some water. Two Team BRM cars out in front in their home state. So giving back to the team down there in pit lane in their hometown, if you like, their home track, a little bit of pride this weekend. So two Team BRM cars out in front. And it's been a little bit of a dry year. The AGI Sport cars, being that Lewis Leeds is the lead driver there, has really been dominating. Up the straight they go, staying on the dry line, these two. So they're not looking for wet patches, straight up the middle of the dry line. Interesting talking to Tony Ricciardello in the sports announcers. He said, you don't want to go along the pit wall here. There's little dips and your aquaplane. So we're just seeing that now that everyone is choosing the run straight down the middle of the main straight here. So don't want to get out in that. Bit of understeer there for Lockie Hughes. So are the tyres starting to get a little bit too warm? There's still plenty of water out there, but certainly starting to see a couple of these contenders starting to try pretty hard. Lewis Leeds has already brought that lead back down to 8 seconds. It was 8.5 seconds half a lap ago. So Leeds, although he's not setting the fastest sectors at the moment, it's actually Lockie Hughes. Having said that, Lewis Leeds in sector 2 and 3 now, 38.4 and a 41.2. So yes, Lewis Leeds is starting to hunt on this front group.
As we approach the final lap of race 2 of the Camps Pace Australian Formula 4 Championship for round 5 the 2019 championship. Our season finale, would you believe, for the championship too. It's an early finish. Lewis Leeds, for example, has got to finish the rest of his Year 12 studies, but at the moment he's got to finish the rest of this lap as well, as Lockie Hughes looks to add the Bend to his list of Formula 4 career wins. He's got Ryan Sewell all over the back of him, but they haven't really got close enough yet to really be battling for position, so it's a bit of a fait accompli for Lockie Hughes to finish that gap like the last stage of the Tour de France. It's a gentleman's agreement between those two. Whoever's first will finish first.
Do you think?
No.
No, that's right. They're not going to be sipping champagne on the Champs-Elysees, are they?
No, exactly. The second one driver makes a mistake, whoosh, watch the other one take the inside line, but it's not to be. These guys have had a brilliant race at the moment. The only two drivers in the 2:09 lap time markers at the moment. It's indicative of where they're at. They're sort of miles ahead of that Lewis Leeds, Antonio Studi, Jackson Walls train. Those two setting 2:10 a second off, which matters at a long track like this. But he's a race winner at Windsor, he's a race winner at Phillip Island, and he's now a race winner at the Bend. Lockie Hughes takes race 2 of the Cams Pace Australian Formula 4 Championship at the Bend.
Great result there from the Queenslander, and a great result from the South Australian local team in Team BRM. Who gets third? It'll be Lewis Leeds. Antonio Astudi gets to the line next, but just a very close gap between those two in the end, between Leeds and Astudi, 0.36. So the number 39 fighting all the way to the very end. But there's our race winner, Lockie Hughes. Tremendous run there for the Queenslander, the Leipzig Australia car. As it's still wet here at Tailem Bend. Lockie Hughes takes the win for Leipzig Australia. Ryan Sewell for Ray White and BRM, two Team BRM cars. Lewis Leeds in the AGI Sport car. Antonio Astudi for AGI Sport. Jackson Walls, Objective Racing. Thomas Smith in the Team BRM SCT Logistics. And Emerson Harvey home in the Shannons Focus on Furniture.